In the last episode of this series, we sketched out why we want to move the arms and shoulders forward instead of pulling them back. And we finished with the question, do we want to move the arms and shoulders up or down? My suggested experiment for testing this was to try stirring for a minute or so and seeing what you habitually wanted to do with your elbow and shoulder. If you tried this, you likely found that, especially as you got tired of doing the same movement, you pulled your elbow and shoulder up. You probably didn't do this intentionally, it just seemed comfortable. Why is that? If we think about this in general terms, what would we expect to happen to the arm when we extend it? Let's say your arms are resting at your sides. If you extended your arms, your hands, your elbows, and your shoulders would move down as your arm extended away from its origin. And by the same token, if you retracted your arm, we would expect the hand, the elbow, and the shoulder to move up. If we consider the muscles involved here, when the muscles of the arms and upper back are shortened, they will pull the arms up and in towards the body. Whereas when the muscles are lengthened, the arms will go with gravity and pull down away from the shoulder girdle. Maybe in retrospect this seems obvious. Maybe this even seemed obvious to you from the very beginning. But have you ever applied this knowledge in your life? When you tested out stirring, did you direct your shoulder, your upper arm, or your elbow down in order to keep your arm extended and not shortened? Or did the thought not even cross your mind? Did you instead allow the familiar feeling of shortening the arm cause you to lift up your shoulder and elbow? We can now finally outline our basic concept of how we need to change how we use our arms. In the habitual use of the arms, the rib cage is tilted back and down, which pulls the upper sternum back. The shoulder blades move backwards as well, and are moved up and in. This retracts the arms, shortening the muscles and pulling the upper arms and elbows back, up, and in. The forearm is different, and we'll get to that soon enough. But so far we can describe the problem here as the upper torso moving back and down, while the shoulders and arms move back, up, and in. We already know we want to move the upper torso forward and up, and now we know we want to move the arms forward, outward, and down. We'll get into the specifics of how we can best do that as we progress, but first let's think about this more broadly. There is a bit of antagonism between these movements. We want to move the shoulders and arms down in relation to the rib cage, but we do not want that to pull the rib cage down. We very much need to raise the rib cage in opposition to the downward pull of the shoulders and arms. I don't think most people are aware of how incapable they are of differentiating their shoulders and arms from their rib cage and torso. Typically, if you ask a person to lift their rib cage, they will lift their shoulders as well. And if you ask them to move their shoulders and arms down, they will move their rib cage down too. Differentiating your torso from your arms is absolutely crucial to gaining control over both your arms and your torso. We must also bear in mind that moving the arms and shoulders down means extending the arms as much as we can extend them. If you've habitually been retracting your arms for most of your life, and most people have, the muscles in your arms will be very short. Even if you have strong muscles in your arms, you will have short muscles. Extending your arms will be quite a change, and it will hurt to some degree. To be clear, this is not a brutal pain. It's the pain of using a muscle in a way that it's not been used in a very long time. But you must be prepared for this. As I said in episode 1, people's habits with their arms are very strong. Going against them will feel a bit like torture. I wish I could say it will only hurt a bit at the beginning, but if you have lifelong habits you're up against, this uncomfortable feeling will not be all that brief. Now, I don't want to give the wrong idea here either. It's not as if you will be in pain all the time. And again, this is a pain akin to what you'd experience from a deep massage, not an alarming pain. The way I've experienced it is that you will have a certain amount of discomfort every time you make significant improvement in your arms. That pain and discomfort is often short-lived, but the amount of improvement that most people need is enormous, and so you will make significant improvements a large number of times. I really can't emphasize enough that most people, and I speak from experience, need to move their arms tremendously far forward. It's almost unfathomable how far back people keep their arms. But do remember, we are not just moving the arms forward. We do not want to move the arms forward and in, for instance. We must move them forward and out. You will find that the outward movement helps make the forward movement possible, and the downward movement will help as well. We're going to start making directions for the arms and trying out some procedures soon. But first, I want to look at what F.M. Alexander had to say about the arms and where they should rest relative to the torso. Alexander made two fairly clear proclamations about how the arms should rest at your sides. But for some reason, many Alexander technique teachers are unaware of these statements. And whether or not you're familiar with Alexander's work, do you have any idea where your arm should rest in relation to your torso? Do you know which direction your palm should face when your arm is resting at your side? Which direction your elbow should point? Has anyone ever instructed you on these things? Do you have any knowledge in your memory banks about these topics that it seems we should all have some idea about? Think it over. Ask the smartest person you know. Call up your grandma and see if anyone ever told her where her arms should hang. Try and really think if you've ever heard an answer to these questions, and then join me next episode, and we'll look at what Alexander had to say on the subject.